Let me now welcome on a very special guest, the co-founder of Dinkytown Athletes, Robert Gag. How are we doing today?
Tony, we're doing well. But this is before we begin, I want to give you a little kudos. Congratulations on graduating from the prestigious University of Minnesota last week. Way to go, man.
I appreciate that. It's I guess, good place to start talking to you as a graduate. But yeah, I guess we'll kind of start why I wanted to talk to you, and you're the co-founder of Dinkytown Athletes. I think the reason I kind of wanted to talk to you is because I feel like so many people know what Dinkytown Athletes is, but like not really. What would you explain? How would you explain what Dinkytown Athletes is to really anyone?
Well, that's the amazing question because I think what we have found over the last 9 months that we've been in existence, my 9 or 10 months, is that it is a confusing industry that we're in. It's brand new. How I like explain it to my father, I think that would be the way to do it. Is
Yeah.
we're a necessary evil in this world of college athletics, and in a real important organization that is really representing the best interests of the University of Minnesota student athletes. So we're representing them on opportunities to utilize their name, image, and likeness. We are, an informing arm. We are letting them know, the best practices for social media, for saving their money that they receive. They're going to be paying in taxes. And then the other thing that we're doing, we're outreaching to Minnesota fan base. We're giving them access to these student athletes that they've never been able to get before. That's the thing that just with NCAA rules in the previous existence of the NCAA, really boosters, which we're a booster club, and that's a lot of times what I do explain. I mean, we are truly the purest sense of boosters. There was not a lot of legal interaction between the student athletes and those boosters. We're able to provide that. So that's again, it's a really expansive world that we live in right now. But that's the way I'd say best describe it, and you have to kind of describe it in little pieces because it can be confusing for the average fan.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the best place to start, and I'd agree with you that it can be confusing, and I think that's what makes it, I guess, so interesting and new, and what makes this era of college sports so different. Because between that, the transfer portal, all these conference realignments, it really feels like it's a big transition stage, and I feel like Dinkytown Athletes is I guess leading that cause at the University of Minnesota.
We are doing whatever we can to put the university and their student athletes in the best position possible. I would say this. I mean, in truth, we started about a year later than a lot of the other organizations representing universities around the country. So, when Derek Burns and myself, we started doing our due diligence in the spring of 2022. We officially launched in the fall of 2022. But again, when you look at some of the Big Ten schools, those guys started the moment that the Supreme Court decision was ruled on in the summer of 2021. They were out running, and so we are playing some severe catch up right now. We're I mean to be candid, we're busting our ass to try to catch up because even before that decision in 21, there were schools that were probably doing it not the right way, and they already
Yeah.
had the machine. They already had the machine going. So we're trying to do everything in a compliant way, working, directly with the same mission and ethics that the University of Minnesota adheres to, as do we. So we do things the right way. We are not doing that pay for play, and I talk about pay for play. I don't doubt that there's schools, Tony, in the South or wherever where they're not necessarily having student athletes work for the dollars that they receive. they're probably just paying them, but that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where truly, these student athletes, they are doing a number of different things. They're visiting charities. They're having appearances. They're doing photo shoots. They're doing social media posts. They have to definitely earn those dollars that they receive, and we're doing it the right way. And I'll tell you, you do hear some negative stories, and you hear the big dollar stories in the media.
Yeah.
But the coolest thing I get, Tony, is like we get the great stories. Like we represent the 96% of athletes that are, the ones that are grinding every day, that are not able to have a summer job. They're on campus, and these guys, whatever dollars they get, they're super appreciative. Some of the best phone calls I got were just people thankful, and they'll do whatever it takes. They want to make sure that, let's say it's a company that sponsors them. They want to make that the student athletes want to make sure that, they were happy with the experience, that they did well. Like I get to see the good side of NIL, and which, a lot of times the good side's not what people report on, right? They like to report on, either dollar number or illegal tampering, but there's some really good stuff happening.
Yeah, the good side doesn't get clicks. Is that people are looking for the
No,
clicks.
you're totally right.
Yeah. I guess what was your motivation behind starting Dinkytown Athletes? And I guess like who's Robert Gag to an average fan? Like why, what's your connection to Minnesota? What made you start Dinkytown Athletes? What was kind of the process of getting the ball rolling?
Okay, so how that all shook down, Tony, is I got to admit, I'm a Johnny. So I went to St. John's. So I'm not a University of Minnesota graduate. I do have a son who's a graduate assistant for the Gopher basketball team, Nick Gag. But I come from a long line of Minnesota, ancestors that definitely went to the University of Minnesota. I've been
Yeah.
the biggest Gopher fan my whole life, and even though I went to St. John's, every loss, every win, I felt it. How it all shook down is my partner Derek Burns, who was a very good offensive lineman in the late '90s and the early 2000s. He's an M winner. He and I we sold our business in 21, and we were going to take a long time off. And he's very tied still to the university. And there's a bunch of rabid fans that were getting going. They were meeting, and they were, essentially what they're doing is like the Gophers need to start an NIL here because we are far behind.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, those same people, they want to volunteer. They want to get input, but they have full-time jobs. We happen to be in a spot, Derek and I, where we were taking a break, and then finally Derek's like, you know what, Rob, and we talked about this constantly. Like, someone needs to step up. Someone needs to step up. And then we're like, okay, and this is going to be one of my mantras, and I hope we can talk about later, Tony. Is like, that mentality of someone else needs to step up. That's what everyone always says, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, if this thing is going to happen, Derek, well, let's be the leaders of this damn thing and let's step up. And he was ultimately the one that said, we're doing this. And I really appreciate him doing that because I tell you what, we did our due diligence in the spring, Tony, then we sort of did a soft launch right when the football season started, and then our official launch in October. It's been a lot of work. It's a true startup company. We came from a company where we had hundreds of employees. We're doing Derek and I are doing every aspect of a company, right? We are, and it's our passion project. So that's really how it came. And then I'll tell you the cool thing is that group where they knew how important it was. We've been able to really draw on some of their expertise, whether it's legal, accounting, marketing, graphics. Like the coolest thing behind us is like a huge group of Gopher fans that are passionate, that want to see it go to the next level. So when people talk about Dinkytown, they might say, "Oh, it's just Rob and Derek." Well, we hire University of Minnesota interns. We manage them because it's really important to us to maximize our operational expenses. So the lower we can keep our expenses, the more we can provide those those dollars and support to the student athletes. So, we have all that, sort of crowdsourcing essentially from Gopher fans, which is just so cool. And
Yeah.
it's kind of what we saw for a lot of it. It's sort of that younger generation of Gopher fans that saw the Gophers beat Penn State, saw a renaissance here in the football, and they want to help wherever they can. So, that's kind of the motivating factor besides how appreciative student athletes are, is just, a lot of people really do appreciate what we do.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of agree with you that the university for athletics is kind of in an interesting position, especially with football leading the way. But like my grandpa went to the U and like he saw them go to the Rose Bowl and he saw things that I didn't see. And when I'm 22 years old, I didn't see many highs for Gopher football. But now the last few years really shows the potential of, I guess, the university specifically for football. But it really has, I think, rejuvenated people like me or even like my older brother. And it's a different, I think, vibe around the university. And I think that's what makes it exciting.
Well, I think, I think the from the athletic director, particularly the PJs of the world. I mean, PJ's enthusiasm. I mean, it hits everybody, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, for me, it's like, what makes me up in the morning? Well, I want to help out PJ, right? Because like he's on a mission. But that's to your point on being 22. I think about it in Minnesota in general. Your age group, it's, maybe you've seen the Vikings in a championship game, but that's about it, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you got to see that big win over Penn State. That's just awesome. But at least, I mean, I'm older, 52. I can remember that 1982 Big Ten champion basketball team. I can remember
Yep.
my dad. That's the happiest I ever saw my dad. He was jumping up and down, and it was just surprised. I've never seen him jump since, but he did that in '97. I don't care. I was there. I went to the Final Four. It was just awesome. And your generation deserves it. They deserve the title. I want to go to a Rose Bowl too. I mean, and that is some of the things like, I say to Derek, I'm like, we're not done here until we are at that Rose Bowl and we are watching that bleeping thing, or if we're at a Final Four, we'll know that we had a little small piece in the success of the program. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I love it. I love that motivation. So obviously we touched on it earlier that there are a lot of good things about NIL, but people like to point out the bad things sometimes. And I mean, schools like Miami right now is obviously leading the headlines with NIL. Saw all the success they had men's and women's basketball last year, and all the reported deals and I think even more recently at other schools, how it's coming out that I mean, when I look at NIL, like the casual fan, I feel like is so much thinks it's just pay for play, and they see this number and they're like, "Oh, that person's getting all that money," and that now it comes out that some of the players aren't even getting all the money that was reported on these deals, and it just seems like a lot of blurred lines right now. And so, I guess from your point of view, like as NIL evolves, because it's still so brand new, like what do you think are the good things about like what needs to be changed? What like in a very broad sense, what do you think the future is with its connection to college sports and specifically Minnesota?
Well, anyone who thinks that they know where it's going is either drunk or they're
Yeah.
lying. So I hate to get into where I think it's going. I mean, there's been a lot of changes since Derek and I started. So I mean, they're trying to put some guardrails on, and I think anytime you can keep sort of the competitive balance to be somewhat fair.
Yeah.
I would say I would advocate for that. Um, uh, but we hear too much about the negative, and so I'm going to kind of come back on the positive side. But I want to say to all the people, and I tell you, Tony, I've had probably 80 to 150 one-on-one meetings with Gopher fans, and
Yeah.
what I hear, it, here's the bottom line. it's not going back to where it was 40 years ago, 30, 20, 10,
Yeah.
3. It's not. This is a good thing for student athletes. It's a really good thing. It's a really good thing for college sports. And rather than and just closing your eyes, hoping it goes back to when, let's say you're 70 years old, when it was when you were 22,
Yeah.
but it's not. So people are too caught up in the 4% of athletes where you're hearing big numbers and whether they're getting paid or not. Really, it's the great stories are the 96% of athletes that are getting represented finally, and it's some of these other sports that you wouldn't think of that we see businesses really wanting to support. It's the gymnastics, it's the Gopher women's volleyball. They have really high. Those student athletes have really high Instagram numbers. They have, there's so many things that are marketable about them. The Gopher women typically have much more experience than the men on sort of social media
Yeah.
etiquette and more followers. So there's some great things there. So a lot of times like people say like, well, I really don't understand really what you guys do at Dinkytown, and so that's a question I probably asked me, Tony, and I would say really we're really pushing. The first thing is fan memberships. Essentially it's a Patreon model where for as low as $10 a month, people have access to the student athletes, and they're doing something really big and helpful. I mean, that's like $120 per year, and again, if you just do pure math, there's 25,000 Gopher season football ticket holders. I mean, if we just got 10,000, and that would be 1.2 million a year. Like, I mean, it's literally like I know everyone's always looking for the big millionaire to come in and bail everybody out. And
Yeah.
again, I'm just gonna say this, like, we're not seeing that. So instead of just being on the sideline saying, someone else will do it or da, 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 it's up to all of us. I mean, $120, that's 2 dinners or who knows? It's really small, but okay, we get fan memberships, which is really important. You could on the fan membership side, Tony, it's like you could donate to a sport or general, but that's been really popular. And the people, the early adopters really stepped up. We really appreciate those. But now it's like we got to get to that next level of people that maybe the sort of the mainstream that really are not into understanding what NIL is. We need people to evangelize that. So memberships are important. The second way we get revenue is just pure donations. So it's the typical person that wants to give dollars, and maybe they can give to any student athlete, they can give to a team, they can give to general. That's really important for us. And then finally, it's the kind of what NIL was. When I first heard of NIL, the Ed O'Bannon with the EA Sports basketball games, which were awesome in football. They were awesome. You probably played those, Tony, as a kid, didn't you?
Oh, definitely. I think they're coming back next summer. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they're coming back. Yeah, I can't wait, man. I mean, that's the one way I bonded with my kids, because we would play those seasons. And anyways, I digress.
It's the best.
But the sort of companies promoting student athletes, and so that's the third way. And we work with Gopher Sports Properties on that. They have a lot of sponsors, and that's been a great relationship for us. So those are where we kind of find the buckets of what we're doing. I think that helps explain exactly kind of what Dinkytown does. Those are the 3 levels. Then there's just a ton behind all of that, but those are the 3 different buckets and pillars.
Yeah. So I guess not to get like too deep into your guys's like entire business model, but so when someone donates or purchases a membership, like you said, like where does that money go specifically?
Well, we'll just take an example of someone that says, I want to be a member for $25 a month. They have when they go to dinkytown.com,
Yeah.
and they fill out the membership information. there's going to be some space where you want to dedicate it to one team, two teams, or to the general. So let's just say they put it to a team. Well, okay, so then, let's say go for women's basketball. So there's, maybe there's 200 members who have said, that's where I want my dollars to go. So what we do with those dollars, we're going to do a couple of things. First of all, it allows for those players those student athletes, I should say, to get dollars for providing their name, image, and likeness. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like they're going to be doing special appearance fees. They are going to be doing player interviews that which wouldn't be available to non-members. They are doing a number of different things, and so that those dollars go to specifically those athletes on that team. Now, of course, if it's not designated to a specific athlete, essentially it gives a war chest, essentially for that, the coach and the university to do with those dollars.
Yeah.
So, again, we're focused on, again, like I said earlier, we are trying to get our operational expenses so as little as possible so that all of those dollars can be used, to provide the services and the support needed for the Gopher student athletes.
Yeah. So like in a basic sense, like you can pick which team, which program you want your donation or subscription fee to be going to. And then like it gets put for like your example in women's basketball. If you said I want to donate to women's basketball, would it then just be like in a pool where it's like an equal amount to each player, or like how is that basically what happens?
Essentially, that's what happens, yeah. And people ask like, how does Dinkytown Athletes, how does it all work? And I always like to say it's sort of like a triangle. The coaches are working with the athletic administration. So and there was a big hire, Jeremiah Carter, who's just been amazing to work with. Came out of the compliance side, and he's our name, image, and likeness sort of coordinator.
Yeah.
So so we're not directly working with, we're not saying essentially to this player is getting this and this player is getting this. That really comes from the university. So it's a triangle. So we take the direction from the University of Minnesota and essentially Jeremiah on where those dollars should go.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that. So is he kind of like the middleman between Dinkytown Athletes and the University of Minnesota? He kind of connects both of you guys.
Yeah, exactly. And when we went into this thing, it was one of those things on the university side that was really important to them was like, we want true full transparency. We want to know where all the dollars are coming in, where it's coming from, and we want to know where it's going. And so, Jeremiah has that ability. He knows, what student athletes are getting what. He is directing that, and more importantly, they know how hard we're working to maximize everything for the student athletes. So that's and that we're on the same mission they are. And again, like what I want to say to Gopher fans all the time is it's like the more money they support, the more money they put into this, more likely that's just going to help everything, right? Yeah. Like, football is such a huge revenue generator. If we're good at football, it helps every part of the university. It helps the businesses around the university. Yeah. It's like having a winning team, particularly in football and the high revenue sports, it is absolutely crucial. So, when people say, well, my $10, that doesn't really matter. Oh, yeah, it does. It does. We talked about that math example. It really does. Yeah. Another thing that I see all the time, again, maybe one of our student athletes goes to the portal and everyone says, oh, NIL, da da da. Well, if we could have one of these Fortune 500 companies, why aren't they giving money? I really want to address this, Tony, because this is what I would say to you. We are working towards that. We have been contacting them. We will continue to contact them. But what the Gopher fans need to stop doing is using that as an excuse. Like just waiting around for General Mills to give $5 million. And what you have to do now is kind of put your CEO hat on if you're a General Mills CEO. So they're shipping stuff all over the world. So what reason would they have to make sure that the Minnesota is the one place where they're going to give NIL dollars? Now they might promote different athletes, but as far as pure donations, people have to stop using that excuse, because I see it. I see all the time. Whenever we lose, I mean, the player or the student athlete gets beat up, the coach gets beat up, and Dinkytown Athletes gets beat up. Like I can see it all the time.
Yeah.
And I always think to myself, well, Dinkytown Athletes is a symbol of our Gopher fandom. I mean, it's our Gopher community. If we support our teams, if we say we support our teams, we got to support Dinkytown Athletes. And if we're not doing it, it's because our fans are not doing it, right? They're sitting back on the sidelines and they just can't. It's like at the same time, this is we're clear and we're transparent that we're playing catch up. We're a year behind, some of the Big Ten teams, the Ohio States, the Penn States, but you can get there quick. That's the thing. You just can get there quick. So it's like this podcast is so awesome for us because, again, it's going to get a different audience, a Gopher fan, and they understand our challenges, and so that people can get involved. It's huge for us. So I really appreciate it again, Tony.
Yeah, totally. Like I was gonna ask you about the transfer portal, because even from my perspective, I get a little bit annoyed when a big player does transfer and everyone's like, oh, it's NIL, it's NIL, it's NIL. Like, at the end of the day, NIL is going to have a little bit of impact in a lot of decisions that student athletes make, that coaches make. But at the end of the day, they're still going to want to go to a team because they like that situation more. And blaming every single departure or transfer on NIL, it's getting kind of annoying from my perspective. And I can imagine from yours, it's even more. And I feel like that's going to be something that continues to change as Dinkytown Athletes grows. And it's just like you mentioned with General Mills, like that's something that I hear all the time too. They're like, there's all these big companies in a pretty large market in Minneapolis. Why doesn't any of these companies help us out? And it's just like you have to build a reputation at one point. They're just not going to jump into this brand new thing and be like, oh, here's $5 million. Like, it takes time to build up image and trust with people. And I just think so many people, especially nowadays, are looking just for the quick fix. And especially now when you have the transfer portal, you have all this stuff where the quick fix can be there, but people need that patience sometimes.
Well, I would agree with you, Tony. But, I want to be clear. I don't know if I said this, but we are not giving up hope, and we are not going to continue to work and dig to try to get Fortune 500 support. Secondly, as it relates to the transfer portal, I mean, I used to, be in the audiovisual business. I was not a coach. I would say, these coaches are under tremendous pressure right now because of the portal, because of NIL, and I mean, it's crazy. But the boards, the message boards, the Twitter feeds, and and some of the haters hate stuff.
Yeah,
I will tell you this, Tony. Like we're in a consortium of other crazies that do the same thing we do, and like you could go to North Carolina and their fan base is bitching about the transfer portal. Like anyone that leaves, we're no different. It's just that we're kind of siloed in our same thing. So what does that tell me? Well, I think PJ says it best. We don't have to have the most money in the world. What we need to do is to be in the game. And that's where we continue to say, hey, Gopher fans, get off the sidelines, be in the game. Because to your point, there's so many, we have incredible facilities now.
Yep.
We really do, right? You talk to any of those student athletes, which we get to on a daily basis, they love it. It's awesome. We have nice stadiums. We have incredible coaches. We have a great administration staff. And so there is other items. But at the same time, when when you look at the way the world is, these college student athletes, take away the COVID year, they've got this little small period of time.
Yeah.
The percentages of student athletes that go to the pros are really small. So they have this little time. In a way, I get it. Like, I have 4 to 5 years to, have any sort of NIL opportunity. I'm going to try to maximize it. And if you go in the portal, it's kind of like you're the shiny object. I get it. I truly get it. But at the same time, once they get to the real world, that the world doesn't work that way. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to work. You can't just go to the next place when, you just find out you're not starting. You're going to have to work harder than that guy that has the spot or the gal that has the spot ahead of you. Instead of transferring, why don't you go outwork them? That's what I'd say. But I'm an old man. I can hear my father talking to me right now. But that's kind of what I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean too. I see both sides of it. And I mean, I agree with you. The crazy fans, they're kind of what makes college sports special, in my opinion. They're always going to be there, and
Yeah.
you just got to roll with them sometimes. But before, you were talking about how, especially with the Gophers, the volleyball athletes, the women's basketball athletes, even when you look at nationwide, those are some of the biggest college athletes right now, between gymnasts like Livy Dunn from LSU, especially in women's basketball now. I'd say Caitlin Clark might be the most popular college athlete right now. And like at the U too, at Minnesota, there's like hockey, obviously, and men's hockey is a sport nationwide that isn't as popular, but at Minnesota, like those are some of the biggest athletes that go to the school. Like, we talked a lot about football and basketball, but from your perspective, when you're dealing with NIL and some of the bigger stars on social media might be from other sports, like how do you think Minnesota, how do you think you can deal with the smaller sports that don't get talked about as much?
Wow, I love that you brought that up because again, when we took this thing on, we're like, we're going to be more than just football, and there are
Yeah,
certain collectives across the country that sort of started out as like, we're going to be the basketball collective for such and such a school, and then
yeah,
over time it's really confused the end users, so people are kind of going into one collective per university. But I would say this, what our plan has been in working with the University of Minnesota is to put this into phases. And so our first phase was football, women's volleyball, men's basketball, gymnastics, and then women's basketball, and that's essentially what we put a ton of focus into to begin with. Now there's definitely some athletes that are involved in the different sports, but
yeah,
now we're hitting that next phase. And so what does that next phase look like? Well, that's the wrestlings, that's hockey, men's and women's, that's baseball, softball, and again, for us to support it, we have essentially, I think, right now about 70 student athletes that are Dinkytown athletes, which is essentially, I'm guessing, around 20%. So, we have to get to that next phase. And how do you get to that next phase? Well, you don't just say you're going to get to the next phase. We need support
yeah,
from the Gopher fandom. We need those fanatics to come support. We need the Gopher hockey fans. And the Gopher hockey fans, I'll tell you, both men and women, they're ready.
yeah.
I do know that they're ready to support their teams, and gosh, what great seasons that they had. And we're gonna see that, but we needed to do it in phase. We're in a startup. We were getting started right when football was starting. We're trying to do everything in a really thoughtful manner.
Yeah. So I guess to simplify exactly how Dinkytown athletes work again, um, so you mentioned that there's 70 like specific people who are athletes that are with you guys as a company. So like, are those the only people that are getting a portion of those donations? or players that like, yeah, like what does someone who's part of like signed on with you guys, like what is their difference between an athlete that's not?
What they do, there's essentially envision this as sort of a sign-on agreement as a Dinkytown athlete that that we sign them on.
Yeah,
There's a monetary exchange for them signing on. They
yeah,
they're going to get some Dinkytown swag, but they have to do a number of things for us. And one of the things that how do you know you're not just giving money pay for play? I'll tell you that if that question came up. Well, essentially how things work is we may say, okay, we're gonna, we've signed you on, we signed you on essentially for one school year. Again, because it's we don't know if a
yeah,
student athlete's going to be here for 4 years, right?
yeah.
One of the benefits of starting a little bit late is you can see some of the mistakes of other collectives. But so we'll put together a contract or an agreement, and they get paid by the job or the task.
Okay.
So you might say, oh, okay, I'm just going to throw out numbers that they're just, for example, $2,000 contract. Well, they might need to do 8 things over the course of 8 months, and then as soon as they complete a task, and we have a software package that we utilize. It's a proprietary for the name, image, and likeness market. And what they since they do that, then they would get that proportion. So let's say they had 8 tasks to do, then you get 1/8 of that $2,000 once they complete it. And
Okay.
so the university can see it. Coaches can see that they've done that activity, and so one of those things. It's like they're not just we're not like the old days of SMU. If you saw that special with
Yeah.
SMU, and they used to get the dropping off cars and stuff like that,
Yeah.
it really doesn't work that way. The student athletes need to essentially do something to obtain those dollars. And
Yeah.
so, and that's at the same time, I mean, when I get a lot of times, people are like, oh, well, I don't know if I'd want to give them money because they could just go into the portal. Well, I'll tell you, like, again, if it's a task-based system, which we have, I mean, if again, if a student athlete did 4 or 5 of the tasks and not all 8, they're only going to get that proportion of those dollars.
Yeah.
So it's there to protect the university. It's there to protect us. But we have, we are in that consortium of other collectives, and we're able to gain a lot of sort of the best practices of what people do.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, I know also a few weeks ago you guys were officially the like University of Minnesota NIL collective. Like, what did that change for your guys's like business operations, and what does that mean, I guess, going forward?
Well, there's a few different. Great question. Actually, awesome question. The first
Thank you.
thing, if you would have laid out, Tony, I could totally see you graduated from you. Totally. Okay. So, anyways, and you were the sports editor of the Daily too, right?
Yeah.
There's been some amazing people that have come up from that sort of linkage, right? So,
Yeah, that is
everybody,
true.
we're
That
going
is
to see where Tony is in 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, I digress. So, okay, give me your question again. I got too excited about you.
uh, what does it mean that you guys are now the
Oh yeah.
official NIL collective of the University of Minnesota?
So one of the reasons or one of the examples I can give, if you looked at our website, dinkytownathletes.com, if you looked at it right now, you're going to notice some familiar sort of marks and logos, they call it in the business, but essentially it's sort of the M trademark, you'd be able to view on our website in photo shoots, University of Minnesota student athletes with Minnesota True colors and marks and logos.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we would have to be really careful. We could never. It was always Dinkytown. So we were not official. So putting together an agreement with Gopher Sports Properties, which is an arm of the athletic department at the University of Minnesota, sort of having that agreement that we put together allows us to do that. One of the things that we'll also see is that in the football season, You're going to see our Dinkytown student athletes on a big scoreboard in timeouts, and they're going to say, help support us. And, we're going to be able to be around the stadiums. And, I think everyone should be listening to your podcast, Tony. But if they don't, this is just another way that we can get our name and the importance of our organization out there.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's just really important. And we've had an amazing relationship with Gopher Sports Properties since day one. They've helped us. They're sort of the business development team is always looking out for Dinkytown student athletes. I can't say enough about working with that group.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to talk to you so all the fans, people like my grandpa know like what you are and how to help. And I mean, I've loved talking to you. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, but I guess one last question for you to get out on. Like, what's your message to Gophers fans now to get them on the Dinkytown Athletes hype train?
Well, this is what I'd say. I mean, that example of sitting on the sidelines, I just view everybody kind of like just looking, waiting, waiting, waiting. Can't wait. We can't wait. And the other thing is, if you've already supported, and I mean, it's awesome. I was just down in Rochester. So many people came up. I spoke at this quarterbacks club thing. So many people said that they were members. I was so happy. But really, I'm going to challenge those members, those early adopters we talked about, Tony.
Yeah,
They have to be fighting the old guard mentality. The old guard mentality of this is the way it was. We need to push what, for your birthday, instead of asking for a gift, your gift is a membership to Dinkytown Athletes,
I love
right?
that.
We'll just switch. We're gonna flip the script, Tony. That's what we're gonna do. And again, let's beat the hell out of Iowa. Let's beat the hell out of Wisconsin. Our coaches are recruiting against them all the time. So when
Yeah,
we look at who our competitors are, it's those sons of bitches from those schools. So we need people to realize it's not just our student athletes that are going to battle with them.
yeah,
It's us as fans. This is our time. Let's do this. Let's not be catch-up. Let's not be the Minnesota that sort of has the wait and see. Oh, we'll see. Oh, no. Let's be leaders, not followers. Let's not see losses before we see wins. Let's just get on top of this right away. Having a podcast, having someone that advocates for the Gophers like you do, Tony, that's what we need. We got to see it everywhere. This state is ready.
I love that. Yeah, that was very PJ Fleck-esque of you. I feel like I want to run through a brick wall now.
I do too, man. I'm not stopping today. This has been a highlight of my day. I got to be honest with you, Tony. But I'm going to be making calls. And there's more Gopher fans we need to call.
I love it. Yeah, I want to thank you again for taking time to hop on. It was great talking, and everyone go check out Dinkytown Athletes, and let's get this ball rolling.
Let's go.